In this video, we're going to learn some surfacing tools in Fusion 360. Hey everyone, this is Matt with Learn Everything About Design, and in this video, we're going to have sort of a bonus episode from the Forms Ferrari that we've been working on. So at this point, the design we see on the screen has had a few modifications from the last one that we worked on. A few of those changes have been I got rid of the creased edge and I beveled it, so now we've got a smooth transition here. I went back to a crease at the bottom of the windscreen and I took away some of the window detail that we had for that opening. I also got rid of the creased edge back here and went to a bevel on both of these edges. It's probably too much detail, but I did make those changes. And then I also added a new forms body to replicate the scoop that's on the side of the car. So this is a detail that we hadn't really talked about. And if we take a look at it on the Ferrari, the way that this geometry works is we've got this sort of air intake because the engine is in the back. And what we really need to think about is this a good fit for using the forms tools? Now, most of the stuff that we've done, we've gotten away with the big surfaces. That's where using the form tools is really helpful. However, when we get into the small details, like the intersection between the A pillar and the fender, those kinds of things, or really the grille opening on the front, those kinds of things are best left to surfacing tools. And the interface between this air intake and the scoop, these are things that are left to surfacing tools. And really because adding these details, this opening on the side of the door and the side of the rear quarter fender, those are going to influence the surrounding curvature. However, in Fusion 360 surfacing tools, if we cut that out, it has no effect on the surface. So let's go ahead and take a look at what I've done here. And this method, the reason that I chose this method to create a form body for the air intake was so that we could see the process. So when we take a look at this, it's really just a general surface air intake. It's probably not perfect, but it'll give us a pretty close result. And then the body, you can see that it comes out of the body and the cylinder where the air intake is sort of nested inside the body. So this should get everything we need. So when we finish the form, what we have here is going to be two surface bodies. We've got the car and we've got the surface. You'll notice that there are some warnings. I did do a split face for a division on the windscreen, and it's something that we don't need to really worry about right now. But now when we look at this, we've got these two surfaces. And the way that I want to approach this, there's actually a couple tools that we can use. We can use Create and Boundary Fill, which will allow us to make and join bodies together. This works really well when we're trying to make a solid body out of a couple surfaces or solids or even planes. Or we can go into our surface tools and we can use some of our surface tools. This is where the surface tools are going to shine. We used the sub-D or the forms modeling to make everything that we needed. And in here, instead of making complicated lofts and a bunch of sketches, all we really need to do is work on trimming. So from the Modify menu, we have Trim. The first thing we have to do is we need to select our Trim tool. I'm going to select Body 2, which is the air intake. And then it doesn't really prompt us anything else, but what we need to do now is select the area that we want to remove. Notice when I do this that it's actually selecting this upper patch here. And when we do this upper patch, it's not going to be giving us everything we need. And the reason for that is because of the intersection between what's going on here. So let's go ahead and cancel this, and let's try to use another tool. We're going to go to Modify, and we're going to select Split Face. When we do faces to split, we're going to select all the faces included on the side door here, and then we're going to select our splitting tool. Here's where, again, it gets tricky. We want to select the body from the browser and not the specific faces on the actual surface. We're going to say OK, and if we hide Body 2, you'll notice now we have this nice cutaway. We can select these faces, and we can hit Delete on the keyboard, and they'll simply go away. Before we do anything else, I think it's important that we mirror this to the other side. So we're going to select the body, create mirror. The mirror plane is just going to be the mid plane of the entire thing. And now we've got a replica of that on the other side, and we can worry about that in a minute. We could also cut the body in half and mirror it as well, but that's not really what we're going to do for this specific case. Now we want to split or trim the gray section with the red body. So let's try the trim tool again. The trim tool is going to be the body itself, and then we want to select the area of our surface that we want to get rid of and say OK. Now we're left with the surrounding surfaces, the intake, and we've got, this sort of nice intersection between the two. Now we want to use a tool called Stitch, and we're going to select the main body, and we're going to select that new surface body. You see a green edge where they're going to be put together, and we'll say OK. And now we've combined those two together. From here, if we want to, we can modify and we can add a fillet to that edge. We want to make sure that we are using curvature continuity, and let's start with a very small fillet. Let's try 1 millimeter and see if it'll work. Everything works good there. We can go up a bit. Let's try 5 millimeters, and that looks okay. And we can say OK. And now if we hide our edges, again, Control or Command 4, you can see here that we have a pretty nice result. That looks like the Ferrari intake scoop that we would expect to see. Because we copied the body, we can do the same thing on the other side. Once again, let's go ahead and let's try trim. So I'm going to trim starting with the body, and then I want to select the area that I want to get rid of. Say OK. Then we're going to repeat that process. This time, the trim tool is going to be the gray surface on the inside, and then we want to get rid of this section in the middle. It doesn't look like it's working. Again, it's having problems, so let's try the modify and split face again. So the faces to split are going to be all of these. The splitting tool is going to be that body. We're going to say OK, and now we can select and delete those faces. Then let's stitch them together. Select the main body, select this body, we see a green edge, and then we can add our fillet. That's also going to be F on the keyboard. We'll select that edge, use curvature continuity, enter the same value of 5 millimeters, and now we have the Ferrari intake scoop that we would expect to see. So that is a good way for us to think about using these surface tools after the fact, because this would be a much bigger challenge if we were trying to do this with form tools. But with surface tools, we can simply cut away the body where we don't need, and then we can use those surface tools to come in and add the detail that we want. And this is why when we began creating the roof and the windshield and all those sections, I mentioned it would be a lot easier if we were using surface tools, because we can just extend these down past and trim them to the surface. So again, keep that in mind whenever you're designing a product like this, that you can use a sort of a hybrid approach. Do the forms tools for the large bodies and then the surface tools for the fine details. At this point, you can use the same workflow to do things like cut away the front grille. If we bring back the canvas, and in this case, we want to show the front, you can see that we've got this sort of grille area. We can start a new sketch. We can start it on the front. I am going to use L for the line tool, and I'm just going to start a line right here. I'm going to hit Escape, and for that line, I'm going to Control or Command select the origin and that endpoint and make that vertical. So that way I know it's exactly on the midline and I can mirror it. Then I'm going to create another line that's just a vertical reference. We'll select it and we'll turn it into a construction line. This can be kind of hard to see with the body, so let's go ahead and hide the body for now. So now I have this line as a good starting point. When I'm happy with the height, I'm just going to lock it in place. I'm not worried about actually going through and creating any specific dimensions. I'm going to take it to the point where it starts to roll over. And if we look at the car body here, let's hide the canvases temporarily, we can see that that's just below that crease that we have on our body. So that tells me that I probably want to lower this a bit. So I want to take that lock icon and I want to remove it. So if I look here, I want to pull this down, and it can be kind of difficult to see. So let's hide the body and the canvases, and let's select the line. You can see that we've got this reference here. We've got a horizontal reference, and it's still fixed. So let's unfix it, and then see if we can drag it down. Select it, unfix it, and then now we can drag it down a little bit. Bring the body back and just find a good place for that to be, and then we'll lock it in place. We can bring our canvas back, and then we can create this. I'm going to use a spline for this. So I'm going to start here, And I'm going to just sort of carry it under until about this point here, and I'm going to hit OK. Then I'm going to create another line. This other line is going to be, again, sort of horizontal. I'm going to say OK. And this point over here at the end of our construction line can come down. I'm going to bring this back, and I'm going to connect the spline to it. We'll Control or Command select both of those, make them tangent. At this point, I'm not really too worried about perfectly matching the shape, but if we have to add more points here or if we need to bring this out, simply drag it because it's still underdefined. And once I'm happy with that, I can hide the canvas just to make sure it looks good. I can use Mirror, select everything I want to mirror the two lines in the spline, vertical construction line, and now I have a sketch that will allow me to trim the front surface of the body. So we can do this as a trim. A trim tool is going to be the sketch. If you have to, you can hold down Control or Command to select everything. And then we need to select the surfaces. And you'll notice that it's having a problem letting me select those. So once again, we can use options like the split body that we used before. We can also extrude this as a surface. And when we extrude that as a surface, we can use the surface itself to cut away. So let's try that. Let's go to extrude, hold down Control or Command. We can pull this whole thing forward. If we look at it from the side, the starting plane we want to actually offset. And I don't know what that value is going to be. Let's try 500 millimeters. Let's try minus 500. And let's try minus 1,000. You can see that we're getting a bit close. If we go back and we remember the original size of the car, we could figure out what that is. Looks like it's going to be about minus 2,000. It puts it right about there. And then this we can manually drag just to make sure that it's through the body. Now we can use our split body tool or our trim tool. So for example, with trim, the car can be our trim tool, and then the area we want to remove is that front section. We can try it again. It's probably not going to work, just like it didn't work before with the air scoop. Try that, and then the area that we want to remove is inside here. You can see that it's having difficulty selecting that. But again, we can use split body. So that's sort of a backup tool, split body or split face, depending on if you're dealing with a surface or a solid. Faces to split, we want to make sure that we grab everything on the front that is going to be affected, including these little sections of the quarter. And we want to make sure that we rotate around and we grab any surfaces that were part of that little lip that we created. So those are the areas that we want to split. And the tool that we want to use is going to be this tool here. So we can say OK. And now we have all these faces that we can delete. So again, hold down Control or Command, however you like to select these surfaces. Make sure you grab these inside pieces. And again, that little bitty piece on this fender over here, make sure we get that. And we'll hit delete. So now we have an opening. And once again, we can stitch those together. Select the main body, secondary body, say OK. And you can see now we've got that sort of opening. We can build a bumper in there. We can do whatever we need to do. This section on the bottom for potential air intakes or openings for other things, this would be a little bit easier because it's one single surface. So we could theoretically use something like just a sketch. I'm going to come in with, once again, I'll just use a spline. And I'm just going to come over and I'm going to put some points in the corner. Bring it back. And we can manipulate the size of the spline. If we want to, we can also do this with straight lines. Because this is a fairly angular car, straight lines might actually be better. We can come down at a slight angle, come over. We can make this one vertical. At this point, these should be fairly basic tools. So if you're not familiar with sketching in here, then you should definitely play around with it a bit. But now that we have that, we should be able to use that as a trim. So the trim tool should be the sketch, and then the area we want to remove is inside there. So we should be able to select that and remove it. You can see that worked pretty well. Again, we could also extrude it, and with the extrusion, we could trim it just like we did before. Either option will be fine. I'm actually going to go ahead and extrude it. And the only reason I'm going to extrude it is simply because I want to use that offset. So we're going to do offset minus 2000 again, sort of the same thing, and then we'll drag this forward. And one of the main reasons I want to do that is so I can mirror it to the other side. So we're going to mirror the entire body, select the mirror plane, and now we've got it on the other side. And once again, we use the same exact tools. We'll trim. The trim tool will be the body. The areas to remove will be the outside of both of these. You'll notice that sometimes it has issues with this. Again, trim tool, select what you want to remove, say OK. We'll repeat the process. Trim tool, select what you want to remove. This one, for some reason, it's not liking it. Let's try again. Trim tool, select what you want to remove, and that's okay. Just didn't like certain aspects of it. Next, we can try this. Trim tool, area you want to remove. Once more, trim tool, area you want to remove. And then we can stitch them all together. So main body, things that we want to stitch, and then we can add fillets to those front edges. Once again, I'll make sure that it's curvature continuous, and I'll add 5 millimeters. And now we've sort of added that intake or that opening at the lower portion. Of course, you could do a lot more, but that's the basic process. So in this video, we learned a couple things. We learned how to take multiple form bodies, for surface bodies, combine them together using some tools. We learned how to create new surface bodies with things like extrude and trim and split away the original body. So that way we get a little bit of realism. You can also use tools like split with a sketch to split a face. And that's really helpful if you want to, in this case, just simply change the color of a face. So if you wanted to make it look like there was a windscreen there, or even if you wanted to trim it away, you could do the same thing with that. Just create a sketch on the top plane. I am going to project this, this creased edge. We can do that with P on the keyboard, or you can go into your Create menu, and we can simply select the edges that we want. I'm going to project these upper edges. And when we look at the canvas, the top canvas of the car, it's actually a fairly straight line across. And we can represent that with, again, a straight line from here, and then we can sort of round it into the side. I do want to make sure that it is vertical in relation to the origin. And I do want to make sure that I do have a vertical construction line. And that vertical construction line is solely going to be used for a mirror. So once I'm happy with its location, I'll fix it. Again, I'm not too worried about dimensions, but I do need to roll it into this edge. And that can be done with fillets or with a spline. We can snap to that, and then we can use things like tangency here. We can try to make this spline tangent with the side edge. And once we're happy with that, we can also use tools to trim or to break the original edge. The problem that you get with that is when it's a projected edge, like we have here, it's not really going to break. So the only way to do that is to turn this into construction. And in this case, we will turn it into construction. And then we can use something like a spline if we want to, or since we don't really need to split that right there, we can simply just leave it at this and just mirror it to the other side. It's going to be situation dependent. So in some cases, you might need to do that. In other cases, we don't have to. So now we can use our tools for splitting the face. And the split tool is, we're going to go ahead and select these three faces to split. The split tool is going to be the sketch, but we're going to have to hold down the Control or Command key, and we'll say OK. And now we've split all this up. So we could make portions of it red if we wanted to, so we could represent the A-pillar. We could make a portion of it black or apply a glass material. So that's the overall point. Is I wanted to make sure that we understood that the surfacing tools can be extremely powerful, and in this case, especially for things like these body features, it's going to be much easier to use the surface tools after the fact than to try to get everything in the form. We can still always go back and make changes to the form. You can see how far back it is in the timeline, but there's nothing stopping us from going back and making adjustments to this and then having it update. If we wanted to change the location of the scoop or the angle or the size, we could certainly do that. You will have to be aware if it crosses over another face and we didn't select that to split, for example, then you will have some rebuild errors that you have to take care of. But for the most part, it will update pretty well. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and save. We're already 20 minutes in, so if you have any questions, please let me know. Once again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.